And I suspect that you won't be able to feel confident in relationships with women unless you actually do a bunch of rejection practice or speed dating or things like that. And I almost want to borrow David's sometimes tongue-in-cheek language, which is you're not entitled to be confident in doing something you've never done before.
Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new teen therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
All right, let's dive in, and we're going to go through TEAM, which we recommend to you folks in your clinical work, which I think if you follow the algorithm in a step-by-step way, it'll boost your effectiveness and your satisfaction in your clinical work. And before we dive right into the empathy phase, we'll just do a little of the testing phase from two perspectives. One is your daily mood log, and one is your brief mood survey. On your brief mood survey, just before the session began, Chris, you indicated a 6 on the depression scale. And as everyone knows or should know, it goes from 0 to 20. So that's just a mild level of depression. But you're having a little bit of sadness and discouragement and low self-esteem and a moderate loss of motivation to do things, which is interesting, and some loss of pleasure or satisfaction in life. So hopefully we'll be able to change those scores. There's no suicidal thoughts or urges. Your anxiety is 9, which is more of a moderate level of anxiety and nervousness and worrying and frightened and a little bit tense. And anger is just 1 out of 20, just a tiny amount. The happiness, this is the 5-item happiness scale, goes from 0 to 20, and you scored 10 out of 20, indicating a lot of room for a boost in happiness. But the strongest dimensions there is you feel a lot of happiness and joy and hope and optimism. You feel just a moderate amount of self-esteem and just somewhat motivated and just some pleasure and satisfaction in life. And all of those scales can go up to extremely. So there's a lot of room for upward movement. And then on the relationship satisfaction scale, you rated your relationship with your folks, and that's 22 out of 0 to 30, 30 being the very highest. So that's pretty good. The lowest area is communication and resolving conflicts. And then how much work have you done since your last session? A moderate amount of work, which you've done in preparing the brief mood survey and the beautiful report that you sent to us. And I'll just say that on the daily mood log, I won't read it at this time, we will later, but that the emotions were pretty high, and this was following a rejection by a young lady who you were attracted to. And for a while, you were feeling 65% down, 98% worried and anxious, 70% guilty and ashamed, and 90% inferior or inadequate, and 90% lonely and alone and rejected, and 90% embarrassed or humiliated or foolish, and 85% hopeless, and 90% defeated, and 15% resentful, annoyed, and furious, which was also the very lowest one on the brief mood survey. And I just read these to say that negative feelings come in different brands and different styles, and and you've experienced some pretty sharp swings in negative moods at times, but are normally have the capacity to feel pretty happy and joyful as well. And with that, and I'm not sure I got all of that right, but why don't you start out here, Chris, and tell us about very interesting issue that you described. I'm so grateful to be working with you, and I would say that your issue is the one that I did the very most during my career, is working with single people with issues of finding someone to love and someone to love them, and dating and so forth. So dive in, and we'll see if we can do some empathy and then see where we want to go.
Yeah, thank you. The issue is that I turned 40 in February, and in my life, I've never been in an intimate relationship. And I've also had very minimal sexual experience. And I had done some work on around that a few years ago, and was in a place where I felt like I'm okay. I'm happy with my life. I like how things are going. And I just sort of resigned myself to being alone the rest of my life. And I was, happy with that. Then I started developing strong feelings of attraction towards a coworker. I actually did some work in some of the Tuesday group stuff around worries and concerns that came up around that. And one of the issues was about, how do I connect with this woman? And I guess just for some context, I worked at a middle school. I'm employed by an agency. I do mental health services in the middle school. It was my first year at this job. And our clinical team, they're all at different sites. And my only interactions with this woman is during the twice monthly meetings that we have, and they're always on Zoom. And so it's very minimal, although we've had 2 in-person meetings, and I had 1 or 2 calls with her early in the year just to talk about work stuff. As the year was coming down, I knew a few weeks ago that we had 1 in-person meeting. I froze up and I didn't say anything or do anything with her. I felt a little guilty about that. And then I knew I wouldn't have any opportunity to connect with her until the next school year, unless I reached out somehow. And the only way I could do that was via email. And in my mind, that wasn't ideal. It would have been better had I done something in person. And so I debated about whether or not to send the email. I did a daily mood log and that sort of thing. And I ended up sending the email, and then she responded. She had recommended a book in one of the meetings. And so I read the book and I really enjoyed it. And so the email was telling her, hey, I read the book you recommended. I thought it was great. Would love to speak with you about it sometime. Let me know if you're interested. And she responded, hey, I'm glad you liked it. I think a few other members of the team have read the book. It might be a good topic for one of our group discussions. And then she gave me another book recommendation. And I said, sounds good. I'll check it out. Enjoy your summer, and I'll catch you next year. So it could have been a lot worse, I think. And but I actually, for a couple hours after that, that's what my daily mood log was around. Both once I clicked send and then once I received the rejection, it was just a lot of negative feelings that were stirred up. And it is a wide range of emotions, some of which I really haven't experienced much recently. The odd thing for me was I have a long drive home from work, and I went straight to the gym. And the moment I got off work, I shifted into this state of euphoria, and I was really proud of myself and how I handled everything. And I went to the gym, and it was hard for me to keep a smile off my face the rest of the afternoon and evening. And then I went to bed, and then I woke up at the middle of the night, and I was in agony again, and feeling really rejected, and just, it was a painful feeling. And so that was a couple of weeks ago, I think. And since then, things have leveled out. And I guess what I'm hoping to have help with is, I would say, generally speaking, how to handle rejection. And more specifically, a tendency when I develop strong feelings towards women to have both positive distortions and negative distortions, where I idolize the person and really attach myself to the person, even though I don't really know them very well. And then there's a lot of negative distortions as well. things don't work out, or I just get anxious about whether or not things will work out. So essentially, that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to get into a relationship necessarily, or to have more sex, although both be fine with me. It's just I would much rather feel confident in my interactions with women without that sense of, I don't know, neediness, and without the kind of the ups and downs that I experience.
Okay, that was perfect. Let's summarize that, Jill, and then we can ask a bit more about some of the
Great.
things you alluded to in high school and some of the things you've worked through previously. But that was beautifully stated. Thank you.
Did you want me to take a stab at it, David?
Sure, yeah, jump in there. You do so beautifully at that.
Okay, well, yeah, Chris, actually, that was a really very clear and insightful and succinct summary. So I do feel like so far, I feel like I have a really good idea of what you've experienced and what you're looking for help with. But let me see if I am getting you right. So you're telling us that this kind of starts in like you, or at least your context is that I just turned 40 in February. And having never been in an intimate relationship before, and having really limited sexual experience as well. And that for some period of time that was upsetting to you, but you're describing that you've done some work on that and you got to a place where you actually feel happy and content with your life. And I think you're saying you generally feel good about yourself and about the life that you live, and haven't been yearning for being in an intimate relationship. But then you said that more recently you did find yourself attracted to a woman, and you give us the context of that she works with you at this middle school. But I understood you're giving us the context to also say, look, it's not like I'm blurring boundaries where I work with this woman like every day or something, but she's part of this clinical team and I only see her like twice a month on Zoom, and occasionally we're on calls, these Zoom calls together. Rarely we're in person together, but you've had enough opportunity to get to know her. You found yourself interested and attracted to her, and you didn't really have an opportunity, or you sort of froze up at maybe your one most recent opportunity to connect with her in person. And she had recommended a book to kind of group of you, and you read the book, you really enjoyed it. And so I'm gathering you felt like, oh, this is a good opportunity to kind of send an email, kind of benign, but I can kind of also, sort of put a little request in there, like, and it dropped some interest in there. That's kind of how I heard it. And so you sent her an email saying that this book she recommended was really enjoyable, kind of thanks for the recommendation, and asking if she'd like to get together to discuss the book. And her response was very nice, essentially saying, glad you liked the book. Lots of other people liked it too. This would be great for a group discussion. So he handled it, very kindly, but reading between the lines, you're going, okay, she's not taking me up on this like one-on-one interaction. And so I think I understood that at first you felt kind of badly and rejected, but then I'm not sure if that's what started, but I definitely heard you say that like pretty quickly after, when you were driving from work or from where you had written the email to the gym, you actually felt really positively, like you felt proud of yourself for how you handled it, for putting yourself out there. You kind of felt euphoria. You said you couldn't stop smiling. So you actually were feeling positively, but then kind of woke up in the middle of the night feeling like that you were in a lot of pain, feeling really rejected. And I think this is the kind of what you share more. You didn't share a lot about those feelings with us, but you did share some on the daily mood log about that you were thinking that you were a fool to think that you had any chance at all, that you'll never have a relationship with a beautiful woman. And so it sounds like you woke up in the middle of the night feeling really kind of plagued with some sadness and worry and upset and feelings of rejection and hurt. And you're kind of telling us like, I think you're explicitly telling us, I'm not really looking for your help in getting into a romantic relationship, although I wouldn't mind that, right? I'm not really looking for help in finding someone or having more sex, although these wouldn't be too problematic for me, but I really want to be able to handle rejection better. I guess that means I want to not be so triggered. I want to be able to be rejected and be okay with it. And then you're also sharing with us that you have, that you get kind of emotional, and again, actually understandably, but you get, because I think rejection is really hard for everyone, but you get emotional, and sometimes you said kind of positive and negative distortion. So part of you can idealize people really quickly kind of put them on a pedestal. Idolize, I think is the word you used. And then also negative distortions like self-blame and really criticizing yourself a lot. And so you're saying, I really just want to feel not so needy. That I just want to say before I wrap up my sort of like summary, because that was really mostly just sort of thought and feeling empathy. I do want to say I really appreciate you sharing so openly with us, and I, you know, I feel really like connected to you hearing this, and I also feel really like what a common thing. I mean, who doesn't feel sad and disappointed when they're rejected? And I can totally relate to, you know, kind of having a crush on someone, liking someone, and then being really disappointed when they don't reciprocate. And I'm guessing that you've got kind of an audience full of people who've also had some of these similar feelings at the same time. And I also appreciate, though, that you want to figure out how to feel a little more regulated, you know, in the midst of rejection and not quite feel so up and down about it. So let me stop there and say, kind of, am I getting you right? Do you feel like I understood? And is there more that you want to share that I'm not quite getting?
That was a good summary. And I think an additional piece I may have left out is being able to move on, to let go and move on. Because there's a part of me that'll hold on to like things might still work out, or, you know, and that can generate more like positive distortions and other things like that that I don't really want to get pulled into.
Yeah, that you that's kind of maybe related to when you said I want to be not so needy. Like there's something about maybe getting your heart, you know, if you find that you're attracted to someone, you sort of get your heart set on that person and maybe idolize them, and then find it hard, even if they're kind of communicating, especially maybe subtly, you know, that they're not interested. It's hard for you to let go and move on and just kind of say that, okay, that's not going to happen, that you find yourself still kind of maybe fantasizing about it working out or being with that person.
Right. And I think, like I mentioned, I really enjoy my life right now and have put a lot of work into, you know, who I am and what I do and my routine even. When I grow attracted to a woman, sometimes if I get really strong feelings, it sort of takes me off track from focusing on my life. Like I want my focus of my life to be, you know, my life and what gives me meaning and value, and not the relationship. I don't want a relationship to be the focus of my life. But that's what will happen when I have strong feelings towards someone. Like my mind, that's like part of the positive distortions, is like, oh, it's like suddenly they're on the pedestal, and that like takes me off track. Like I don't like, it feels good to have those distortions and to fantasize about someone, but it pulls me out of all the good work I've been doing, you know, where I am the areas of my life where I'm confident, the areas of my life where, you know, I get a lot of enjoyment. I kind of lose sight of that if I have really strong feelings towards a woman. And so that's also what I'm hoping to address.
Could you tell us, Chris? I feel like it would be really helpful to know like a little bit about your life, just so that I can really connect with it, because it sounds like you feel really proud of your life and you feel like you kind of have it set up in such a way where it feels really content and fulfilling. And then this, you know, kind of interest in women can really pull you away from that. But I even if briefly, I feel like it would be really helpful to know what you're feeling good about, what it is, what your life looks like right now.
Yes, and if you like, feel free. And I also feel close to you. You know, this is something that, you know, I went through personally. I remember how another fellow and I, that was a buddy in medical school, Spider, he was younger. And he was really a good looking, cool guy, but he was just extraordinarily shy. And I don't think he'd had a date in years. And so we went out and spent 2 weeks collecting rejections all day long to try to get over our fear of rejection. And we went all around Palo Alto and San Francisco. And we just took turns saying, okay, go up and see if you can get a date with her and see if you can get a date with her, you know, taking turns. And we had 100% rejection rate. We must have done it 150 times. And so we didn't help our love lives at all, but it got us over our fear of rejection. And then I found some other things that were way more effective at boosting our our love life, but we'll get on to all that good stuff. But I do feel very, very close to you. I just have a stupid question, but our shirts are similar, and I also noticed that your left eye wanders to the left a
Yes,
little. And
right.
what causes that?
It's ptosis of the eyelid. So the muscle isn't the muscle. My eye is weak. So it's part of the story too. Is I've had 3 surgeries on the eyelid, and a couple of them were in high school. I lived in Palo Alto. I went to Cali. Is
What year was that you were going to Palo Alto High School?
Well, I graduated in 2001.
Oh, okay.
And then my family moved away from Palo Alto, and I've been insecure about my eye. It's just gotten worse since then, and it actually, for a while, that was one of the excuses I guess I made for not being in a relationship or not approaching women, is I thought it would be
Oh, yeah.
creepy.
Interesting. Well, the reason I asked is because when I was little, my left eye wandered, but toward the middle, so I was cross-eyed,
Yeah.
and then I had surgery, which I can barely remember, when I was, probably 4 years
Mm,
old or 5 years old or something like that, and they
mm,
took probably similar to what you had. They took a little tightening of that muscle to straighten out the eye, and then I had to wear glasses for a while, and I hated those glasses because they made me look goofy. And my parents said I often tried to flush the glasses down the toilet, but I was just wondering about that. But tell us a little bit about you mentioned some of your experiences in high school and some
Wait,
of the
David,
things you've done
I,
in the
I,
past.
I had asked Chris a question, and then you started talking, so we didn't actually get to hear his answer to the question, which was to tell us, because he said a number of times that he feels really proud of the life that
Yeah.
he's built that doesn't involve a relationship. And maybe before we go back, if he could just tell us what is his life like right now, because I feel like that's going to be really important also.
Yeah, tell us, bring yourself to life for us a little bit. You
yeah.
sound pretty fascinating.
Well, in April I celebrated 12 years of sobriety, and I also got promoted a purple belt in jujitsu. So the last 7 years I've
Right.
been, training regularly. And I've had a lot of other confidence boosters at work like the day I sent the email, I was so nervous. And I got up because I have an hour commute to work and an hour commute back. And I wake up at 4:15 during the work week, and I meditate for 45 minutes, and then I go to the jujitsu gym. And there was these 2 guys, and you spar, there's 5 rounds. So you're actually going all out against these guys. And there's this one kid who's really talented. And he actually put my friend to sleep. He choked him unconscious. But that morning I did really well against him. It was so out of character. I was like, whoa, something's up. And then the next I rolled with, I smashed him too. And I was like, I'm doing way better than normal. This is like a confidence boost. And I was thinking about that email. I was like, the universe is giving me a sign. I showed up to work, and one of the teachers there was like, hey, Chris, I'm ordering coffee. Can I get you a coffee? It's on me. Like, I was like, sure, yeah. And he gave me a coffee. And then this other teacher, he's a deadhead, and I'm kind of a deadhead, and he gave me a bunch of music earlier in the week. And we struck up a conversation, and I was just like, people like me here at the school. And my boss, after our meeting, she asked me about, like, hey, can you, because I worked in alcohol and drug treatment, and she's like, can you give a training to like some of our team, next year when we come back? And I just want to make sure that you're okay supervising this intern and like these other, and it just felt like, oh, right. I felt good about these things that I was doing, and it felt like, okay, it's like, let me send this email, and I'll give it a go. To paint a picture of why I feel good about that, back to Palo Alto, is there's a lot of, in my formative experiences that contributed to both, I think, my issues with intimacy and sex and with alcoholism. I had a very privileged childhood. I love my parents, and I also had a great friend, my best friend since first grade, and we were super close with the family. Like, I was over at his family's house all the time. They invited me to family vacations for many years, and we were super close from first grade through middle school, and into high school. We had different kind of social groups, but we were still fairly close. And he even set up like my first. I have had one girlfriend in 7th grade that he set up with like this, and so he was like my porthole to the world of women. And he was also very effeminate, and he's come out as gay, but we didn't really know that or what that was as when I was younger. He was also much more like, he went through puberty earlier than me. and he was much more sexually motivated than me. Like he would, come over and he'd want to look at my dad's Playboys, and we knew where the hiding spot was and that sort of thing. And I was always very anxious and nervous, and there was a time when my parents were gone and we had alcohol, and we had some girls were over at my place with my friend, and we all got really inebriated, and he was aggressively pursuing some of the women, although he was puking and getting kind of messy, and eventually they went home, and he turned his attention towards me, and I again was very inebriated and kind of went along with it. And so there was a sexual experience, and it wasn't like a complete experience or anything too crazy, but I remember when I woke up the next day, it just was like it flipped my world upside down, because I couldn't really make sense of it. It didn't really fit in with who I identified as. And it's like I remember it like took the color out of my life. It just like, and I remember that was like a big turning point too, where I started to drink a lot more, and I treated my family not as well as I could have. Like I wasn't very nice to my family. I feel bad about that.
Just stop for just a second. You're saying after the sexual experience, it kind of turned your world upside down, and you were confused and started drinking a lot at that point. And then you just said that you weren't very nice to your family. I didn't quite know what that meant.
Yeah, well, it wasn't. I remember there was a time, like me and my brother were really close, but I remember after that, I just was in a deep depression for a while, and he would like want to play video games, and I just was not having it. There's times where I made him cry by yelling at him. I'd just be mean, basically. And my parents, I started getting in a lot of trouble with alcohol. I had a job at a small computer company downtown Palo Alto, and they would have me sometimes deliver deposit checks at the banks. And there's that Long's Drugs on University Avenue that you
Yeah, I
can
know
go
that
in.
drugstore.
Yeah. And so I would take the checks, I would walk through Long's, and I had baggy pants. So I grabbed 2 bottles of liquor, and I put them under my pants, and I go drop off the check. And then I would take the bottles and I would put them in I had long socks. I had like these flaps in my socks, and I go back into the Longs on the way back, and I grab 2 more bottles. I put them in my pants, and then I go to my car, and I would put the liquor into my car, and then I go back to work. And so I started amassing a decent amount of alcohol. I didn't do that all the time, but I got good enough that I always had enough alcohol. And and I started smoking a lot of marijuana and eating mushrooms and that sort of stuff. And a period of 8 months or so where things started to deteriorate, even more. And I ended up getting arrested like 4 times or something. And
For shoplifting or for what?
no, like the first time my friend was dropping me off, jumped out of the car. This is at 2 a.m. in Palo Alto, right in front of my house. But there was a police car right behind us, and he told me not to jump out, but I was drunk and I had a giant glass bong in my hand. And then there was 3 or 4 police cars descended in front of our house in this nice suburban Palo Alto. And that was the first time I got arrested. I was 17, so I was released into custody of my parents. But my dad came out and was screaming at me. It's like, he's a big guy. He's intimidating when he's angry. And I actually found out years later that he actually was in a blackout during that. He struggles with alcohol too. And he actually still, just like a few weeks ago, he just wrecked the truck. They're in Iowa, and so now me and my siblings are trying to get him, my parents, some transportation, because his drinking, like once we moved from Palo Alto, he essentially in the last 15, 20 years, he's lost all the wealth, and it's been a sad picture to see what's happened. He's someone I really still love, and I look up to him, and it's been painful to see these losses. And just to add, back when I was in high school, and I was sort of in this depressed state, and I still really wanted to connect with women or with the girls in my class when we had phone directories. So we didn't have cell phones. Like they had the phone directories where you had the class list of all the phone numbers. And I would get drunk and I would call. I would black out sometimes, so I don't remember everything. But I remember, like, I would call sometimes a girl I was interested in at 11 at night. I don't have a lot of memory of a lot of this, but I do remember because one time I blacked out. I went to school the next day, and I had a few drinks. So this was the second or third period because I went to a friend's house and I didn't go to the first period. I was in class, I was feeling good because I was drunk, and then they pulled me out of class, like the security guy, and he took me into the building, and it was some school counselor building. There's like several police in there. I had apparently, when I was blacked out, I had threatened to kill somebody, like during one of these calls. I think the girl was probably rightly scared and gave the phone to the mom, and then apparently I threatened to kill the mom or something. And it happened to be on April 19th is when I made the call. So it was actually on the 20th of April, which is just a couple of years after Columbine. So I guess like the police were like really, really sensitive to threats. And that's something like I don't remember doing. I remember the fallout. I remember that year was like a turning point too, because I was always so quiet. I remember a friend had talked, he basically shared how cute girls that I was interested in thought I was crazy. Like, is he crazy? I felt really embarrassed. And so when we moved from Palo Alto to Iowa, I was happy. I was like, I'm never going back. And yeah, so I think like, and I would sometimes have like, just kind of really angry thoughts about you're a piece of shit. I hate you. Like I was talking to myself, and it's been like over 20 years since that. But when I sent that email just a few weeks ago, and I was still waiting, like some of those thoughts, like I was like, I haven't felt this forever. But it's like you're like cut your throat, you piece of shit.
So let those tears come flowing out.
You shared so much with us, Chris, and I just wanted to also tell you that I was feeling super sad hearing your story and felt like crying myself. So just wanted to let you know I'm also feeling really moved and really, really sad for you for just everything that you've gone through and how painful so many years of drinking and being out of control and feeling out of control, and then I'm sure feeling terrible about yourself.
Suffering alone.
Yeah. And you're also saying it was been a long time since you had such negative thoughts toward yourself, but maybe that was more common back then. Yeah, that you had those thoughts like just kill yourself and angry thoughts toward yourself back then, but you hadn't felt that in such a long time. And then that kind of came rushing back when you sent this email, triggered a lot of negative thoughts.
Tell me, Chris, how you're feeling right at this moment. How sad and down are you feeling just right now?
It feels kind of good to get it out.
Yeah, glad to hear that.
Yeah.
You want to share with us just what's coming up for you right now?
Or if you don't want to talk just right now, just let those feelings come. Just notice what you're thinking, what you're telling yourself, what pictures are in your mind, and then you can tell us in a little bit. It sounds like that was a horrible time for so long when you were growing up. Just awful. And now it seems like you've pulled yourself out of the ashes and developed a magnificent life for yourself. I'm so proud of you and feel so close to you to be sharing so much with the group. And in a little bit, I'd like to know, how you feel right now being so open here and so honest in the group and sharing so much of yourself. I feel like we're kind of walking on holy ground right now.
I was thinking how I disappointed my family, disappointed my dad.
And you mentioned him coming out and screaming at you in front of the house when the police cars were there. And did you say that when you moved back to Iowa, I think you said it was, that your dad fell on hard times?
Yeah.
I think he was saying that his dad has a drinking problem and has for a long time, and that things just got worse and worse.
We moved, and he actually went to Hazleton like in 2002 or 3. He was sober for a little while, and then he started drinking again behind closed doors, and he hid it from people. And then it's just been like that for the last 5-10 years. And I really love my dad.
Are you feeling a lot of sadness because of the fact that he's not doing well? Like, you feel so much love for him, but his life has really gone downhill.
I wish I could help more. I don't have a lot of money. My dad supported his parents and my mom's parents, and I part of me feels like I disappointed him. I don't have I don't have money to help him. I don't have kids. I think he had a lot of high expectations for me. And I think I ruined that.
What did I ruin?
I didn't live up to my dad's expectations.
I felt so sad hearing what happened to you when it sounds like you were in middle school or maybe early high school. And, the story that you told us about that kind of early trauma with your best friend and both of you being drunk and him coming on to you sexually. And my heart just aches for you. I have two teenage boys, and I just kind of pictured them being in that situation and, kind of waking up the next day. And I was so poignant when you said that all the color came out of your world. I mean, it sounds like it was such a traumatic event, and that it was such a turning point for you. Things went so downhill. And I can imagine just that you probably had so many confused feelings and emotions. I would imagine you also felt angry, but this was your best friend and you were drunk, and maybe feelings of guilt and shame. And it sounds like you just immediately turned to drinking, right? I'm guessing drown your feelings, not think about it, not feel it. And kind of from that point forward, we're like blacking out, drunk, showing up to school drunk, right? All of that, I'm guessing, at least in part, stemmed from just having such a confusing and painful experience that turned things around for you, turned things upside down for you. I just really felt so sad for you hearing your story.
Thank you.
It's like your entire world was falling apart.
Yeah. And it took, I didn't get sober until I was 28. And so I had a lot of shame around that experience, but also like my inability. I just didn't know how to connect with women because I would be so anxious. And, my history is it doesn't go well when I had my own kind of maladaptive way of trying to connect, and it didn't work. And so like I had, my eye surgery, other things where I just felt like maybe, physical insecurities plagued me for quite a while.
And if you think it's like you missed, though, also this period from 14 to, what did you say, 20? When did you say you got sober?
28.
28. Yeah. So it's like kind of 14 years of, development, right? Of kind of social and romantic development that was just totally not existent because of drinking, understandably, right? Because avoiding it. And then maybe, as you're saying, having a not healthy way of trying to connect, the phone calls and trying to connect when you're drunk and things like that I'm sure backfired for you.
It worked once. I remember.
Tell us about that time.
It was like we had moved to Iowa, and I found the directory, and I called. There was a girl. She's a couple years older, and because she's in my sister's class, and she's very attractive, and she went to a Big Ten school because I went to the University of Iowa, and she was at Wisconsin or something, and and I called her. I remember being drunk, and I remember like we had a whole conversation, and she it was like, thanks for calling, or it was like, how did it, I don't know. Again, I don't remember most of the conversations I had, but one time it worked. I wouldn't
But that was sort of actually, yeah, you sharing that is like, that was sort of that was your MO. And that was like kind of the only way that you tried to connect with women, right? Like drunk, random directory, right? Like,
right.
Yeah.
Like fairly anonymous kind of.
Yeah. And then obviously you're sharing with us in some ways. I feel like what I'm hearing from your story is that there were just a lot of experiences really starting with that middle school one, but then what got mounted on that in terms of drinking and arrests and like sort of all of this stuff that really did have you feeling pretty badly about yourself, right? Like for a long period of time. And I'm guessing sort of a cycle, like with addiction, right? Where like you drink and then you do stupid stuff and then you feel guilty and then you drink more. And, and then I kind of heard you say that you actually really turned things around and you're living this very healthy, sober, physically fit, really active. You got the, waking up early, you meditate, you do jujitsu. Like it sounds like there's so many ways that your life is so, healthy.
Ultra healthy, actually.
Yeah, ultra healthy, but it does sound like the sort of underlying "I'm a piece of shit," gets triggered, or got triggered in this case from a rejection that really kind of throws you off.
Right.
That's sort of how I'm putting your different stories together, but I'm not sure if I'm getting you right.
Yeah, and it's exactly, yeah, that like that it touched in on this old pattern of, you know, thinking and feeling that wasn't pleasant. And
Yeah.
that's, I think I need to kind of catch myself up to where I'm at, that I'm not this high school kid anymore, and
Yeah.
I've got a lot of good things going on.
Right. Almost like it triggered it. Right. You're saying I gotta catch my mind up sometimes to who I actually am now, like the person that, gets up early and
Yeah,
meditates and does jujitsu and has friends and has a career and people at work who want to buy me coffee and want to promote me and ask me to present and right, like all these sort of
yeah,
awesome ways that you're like a rock star right now, but that sometimes your brain sort of puts you right back to telling yourself that you're, no good and a piece of shit and
right.
kind of like you used to feel about yourself.
Right. And I would say the one thing that is kind of true though is that I have such limited experience. I'm still kind of a 14-year-old when it comes to
Yeah.
like that was actually some relief when she said there was a little bit of relief that,
Yeah.
oh, now I don't have to like figure out how to go on a date.
Yeah.
Right. I don't have to worry about it.
I
Yeah.
have a question for you. How you're being very open here in our group with many colleagues, 25, 35 people. How are you experiencing this being with the group tonight and being so open with everybody?
I feel pretty at ease with it. I'm not too, you can only see like 6 people at a time, so I don't, was not overwhelmed with that. And I actually, a few months ago, I sort of had some exposure with this where I was on this meditation retreat where you work in dyads. It's kind of hard to explain, but
Mm-hmm.
and the other for like 3 days, people can't respond. Like when you're a talker, they're a listener. When they listen, no one can talk to you about what you say, and so you kind of do this spiritual inquiry and you say what comes up. And for me, a lot of this stuff with regards to relationship came up, and it was like exposure because they couldn't say anything to it. Was like, oh, I actually, at the end of the retreat we all felt very close to each other, and so I
Oh,
felt like,
neat.
oh, I can actually open up about this and it doesn't push people away necessarily.
Yeah, right. Uh-huh. That's
that,
neat. Where
that's sort
was
of
that retreat?
that was in Mackenzie Bridge, Oregon.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you had that experience. It gives you a kind of another path to connection,
Right, yeah,
and to a really deep kind of connection that you're kind of doing tonight also.
yes, yeah,
It's not quite the same as the performance anxiety of a date.
no,
Yeah, it's really beautiful to see what you're doing tonight.
thank you.
Yeah, exciting in a way. Let me ask you a question here. The To what extent do you feel that Jill and David, I guess Jill primarily, but David a little bit too, are understanding how you've been thinking and feeling, and to what extent you feel accepted?
I feel completely accepted and I feel completely understood.
What grade would you give us on empathy? Probably sounds like a ridiculous question, but
I give you an A.
yeah.
Yeah,
Is there anything that we're missing we haven't gotten?
I don't think so.
Then I have a question for you. Suppose this tonight goes really well. When we've completed this work with you, what would you like to be feeling at the end? What would you like to be different? Now, earlier you said you'd overcome your fear of rejection and be able to be proud of yourself in your interactions with women, and to have a sense of dignity and self-respect. And it might still be the same goal, but you've opened up with such a tremendous floodgate of emotion and memory and powerful experiences. So what would you say your wish would be on your wish list?
I mean, it's similar to that. It has to do with that confidence. That I feel so much in my life outside of relationships, and I'd like to carry that into relationships or interactions with women. Like what would I one of the so when I was kind of doing like a mood log, so I did some work in the Tuesday group when about the email, and then I did more. And one of the things when I was working on myself was that it was more important to me to be rejected and to be by this woman and to be okay with it than for her to accept me and then to still have that same fragility. that because if she would reject me down the road, I would still kind of break. It was like more important to have this sort of unconditional acceptance of myself as, a worthwhile human being that isn't dependent on being validated by a woman or being loved by a woman. I'd like that. Does that make sense?
Oh, fantastic. You're very articulate.
Yeah.
Now, can I go through your negative thoughts from your daily mood log, just as another piece that we kind of haven't shared with the group yet?
Yeah.
Because I think it would share some light on what you just stated so beautifully. And I also have a couple from thoughts from your original email that I kind of formatted just before we met and studied over and absorbed. But when this woman kind of didn't respond in the way you hoped to your invitation to get together, you woke up in the middle of the night after having initially felt bad, and then you felt proud of yourself. That was so beautiful, the way you said that in the gym, and how everything was so positive. And then you woke up in the middle of the night and with these really intense negative feelings, and you were telling yourself, I was a fool to think I had any chance at all. And you believed that one 80%. I ruined it, and now I'll never have a relationship with a beautiful woman. And you believe that one 85%. And put a bullet in my head, I don't want to be alive if I'm only going to be rejected. And you believe that one 60%. And I made her uncomfortable, and now she won't ever want to be around me or see me. And that was 70%. And I'm not man enough to attract a woman. That was 80%. And she's only attracted to successful men with lots of money, and that was 90%. And then also in the email you sent, there were some similar ones. It's the end of the world if she isn't attracted to me. And also the positive distortion, she's perfect for me and there's no one else like her. Or sex with a beautiful woman will complete my life or completely fulfill me. And then you said one thing I didn't include in the daily mood log. It's okay to share these thoughts with the group because you've been saying them, that this is that when that very angry, really powerful angry voice comes in and says, you're a piece of shit. I fucking hate you. Cut your throat. You don't deserve to be alive. I'll fucking kill you. And that horrible voice. And so one way to, kind of make your goals for work perhaps a little bit more specific, because I'm kind of simple and think in somewhat concrete terms. Would part of your goal be to continue to develop your strength at crushing these kinds of negative thoughts and feelings when in response to rejection?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's something that we could perhaps deliver and with great pleasure, actually, and like a little more verbal jujitsu, which I suspect you're already pretty darn good at. But let me just ask you the conventional question here. Suppose, Chris, that we had a magic button, and if you press it, all these negative thoughts and feelings would just completely disappear and vanish, and you'd have no anxiety around women, and you would have no feelings of despair when rejected by a woman. It would all come automatically. You just press that button, you'd arrive. Would you press that button?
Right now, I would actually.
Okay, great. And we don't have, as you know, a magic button, but we do have some pretty powerful techniques, and I suspect we could deliver that result to you. But I'm not sure it would be a good idea to do that.
Could I just ask one question before you go into this direction, David? Kind of a
Absolutely.
Because I know we're moving in the direction of working on this daily mood log, and I'll turn it right back to you and we can do that. I just want to share one thought that I have about sort of conceptualization. So Chris, you shared with us definitely that you want to get over this fear of rejection. And I think that if we work on this daily mood log, we will help you to get over the negative thoughts that come up when you get rejected, right? That is the fear of rejection. You also said that I'd really like to feel confident in relationships with women. And I just wanted to share with you that I think these are actually two different things. And I suspect that you won't be able to feel confident in relationships with women unless you actually do a bunch of rejection practice or speed dating or things like that. And I almost want to borrow David's sometimes tongue-in-cheek language, which is you're not entitled to be confident in doing something you've never done before. And just as a patient comes to me and says, I really want to get over my fear of heights, well, no talking in the world is going to get them over their fear of heights, right? We could do some cognitive work, but ultimately they're just going to need to go to a lot of high places, and then they're going to be confident in their ability to go to high places. And so I just want to be clear to you, I think we could do really fantastic work to get you over this pain and fear of rejection, right? And I'd love to do that work with you. I think you probably also need to do a different type of work that David loves to do as well, which is in the the rejection practice, the accumulating dates. Like, you're not gonna be confident because you've never done it before, right? And you're like a 14-year-old, who's usually pretty nervous and clunky and awkward on their first date, right? And you'd have to sort of like be willing to do that work, and that's more like exposure work. So David, do you agree with me?
Yes. And from a simple teaching point, I think we're talking about outcome and process resistance. And the outcome resistance, we can deal with the positive reframing, and that's the direction that I started us moving in. But also, Jill, you've wisely brought up the thing of process resistance, and that's that you won't feel confident in relationships until you're having a lot of success in relationships, and the price to pay for that is being really awkward and klutzing and making a fool and an ass of yourself repeatedly. And does that sound like something wonderful that we're offering you?
Not really, no.
Well,
I agree with all of that. I think I like that I'm not entitled to confidence. That's something that would take practice. That makes sense to me. And the other, I have a related question in whether this would fit under the overcoming fear of rejection, but the letting go, getting over of this woman I'm attracted to, I can still have like some positive distortions around that. And I'd like to just be able to, put that to bed, just to let go and just get on with the other.
I think that's part of growing up for all of us. I come from a family of late bloomers, so I think you're on perfect schedule. But some of us had to teach ourselves at a later time and learn the ropes, because I didn't know how to do it. I was brought up in this real right-wing conservative family where even kissing girls was like some cardinal sin, and I was just as awkward as can be, and then kind of learned the ropes, and things changed dramatically. And I don't even remember what I was going to say, but I had this friend who was kind of guiding me, and he would sometimes present me with some kind of gorgeous gal, kind of like your friend maybe. And and I remember once I went back to my, I think we were eating at a pizza place in Palo Alto, and we were trying to meet some cool ladies, and he said, "Oh, I know, I've just the perfect girl for you." But that's the language we used. I know it's politically incorrect. And he called this gal, and she came, and she was gorgeous, and she was dressed in high heels and like this beautiful clothing. And she said, "Oh, Michael said I'm supposed to spend the weekend with you. And by the way, my husband's out of town. But the only catch to it is you have to promise not to get attached to me, because there's a different level you're trying to learn And the secret of it is not getting attached to anyone. It was just such an interesting thing. But I do think what you're saying, and I hate to be revealing these horrible things about my past, but you did, so I guess I can too. But it was fun to learn those things, and yes, that is something that you can learn. But those positive distortions is a trick that evolution has played on us to make us super horny and really go after sex, so the human race will survive. But yes, those are positive distortions. And as you become more successful, then we want to where the women are chasing you and pining over you, and you're in control. And they're the ones that have the positive distortions about you because you're a handsome guy and you're an awesome guy and you're a vulnerable guy and and you're brilliant and you've got so much to offer. So yes, I think that would be definitely one of the things. But like anything, you have to kind of work at it, and that's that initial phase of just idolizing someone and thinking they're, and women do that too. And, almost everyone at first, I have the, you know what the Burns rule is. People only want what they can't get. We never want what we can get. And so that's happening on both sides of the equation. But yes, that'd be a good thing to learn how to get over, and a good goal to have, and an attainable goal.
I think though that I just wanted to say, just to come back to the original goal, Chris, that those thoughts actually are on your daily mood log. So if your goal is to get over your fear of rejection, and we just made to make sure that the thoughts on the daily mood log match that goal, which they do, and then the thoughts on the daily mood log also match this goal of getting over the positive distortion, because you have this thought, it's the end of the world if she isn't attracted to me. So that would be a positive distortion. And you have sex with a beautiful woman will complete my life. And that would be another one. So I guess what I would say is, I don't know, I get the difference between outcome and process. I was more saying, actually, I think there are two different conceptualizations. One goal, the one we could work on tonight, would be getting over your fear of rejection and getting over your putting her on a pedestal, right? Because those are all thoughts on the daily mood log that we could work on. What we won't target tonight by working on the daily mood log would be confidence in dating. And that would have to come through part 2, exposure therapy, right? And so that was more my point, was just conceptualizing them as kind of two parts of the problem. I think you could get healed, with one part, working on the daily mood log, and that was your main goal. But just wanted to clarify that if you wanted to work on part 2, that would require. But I think, am I right, Chris, that where you wanted to start tonight is your fear of rejection and also your positive distortions that I can't breathe without this woman's love.
Right. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Is that okay with you, Jill, or do you want to set the agenda in the opposite direction and do the fear of dating thing first? Or I mean, the actual dating exercises and exposure exercises.
No, I think Chris, I mean, my opinion is Chris has the energy and the interest, and we kind of have now the rapport to really work with him on being able to feel good about himself, even when someone rejects him, right? And also not thinking that this woman, that life begins and ends with this woman. And I think he could do that before part 2, which would then be like, okay, so now you're not so worried about getting rejected, but do you actually want to feel, like you have some skills in this area or feel more confident? And then we could work on that. I don't know. I think that sounds doable, especially because Chris didn't, he explicitly said in the beginning, my goal isn't to have a dating life. My goal is actually to feel less ungrounded when I get rejected. Thank you, David.
Awesome.